Okay, unexpected. I think I need to just turn our attention. We'll come back to your calls on whether Harry will... what your response to Harry's attending the coronation alone, the palace being relieved. 0344 499 1000. We'll take more of your calls in a moment. However, let's turn attention to Dr. Roger Gewolb, CEO of Fair Money. Dr. Roger, very good morning to you.
Good morning, James.
All sorts of things to talk to you about. Let's start on with the Bank of England. Bank of England, what do you make of what they're doing and how they've achieved whatever they've been up to?
Well, after distinguishing themselves with 11 consecutive interest rate rises in a little over a year, taking us from 0.1% to 4.5%, crushing consumers, British business, destroying large segments of the property and rental market, and basically making everybody totally depressed, whilst doing nothing whatsoever, this program, to combat inflation nor protect the pound against the dollar. They're doubling down and going for a real win in creating Britcoin.
Can I just ask you though, just about those interest rate rises? I mean, we were kind of forced into this because of what the US did. If, for example, we'd left our interest rates low whilst the US raised theirs, I mean, we would have been, stuffed without a paddle. So, they're being forced into that. But the Britcoin, in terms of a digital currency, again, is their hand being forced?
Well, just a moment. I'm sorry, I can't allow you to slip that one in, James. It has not protected the pound against the dollar. We've been at 150 for a very, very long time. We're at 120 now. How's that working out for you? And they certainly weren't forced into it, because in 2009, we had a similar situation of cost push inflation, that is non-consumer driven inflation. And the Bank of England left the interest rate alone at 0.5% for 3 years, while the cost push ran itself out, as it always does, and as it's going to do now, with inflation being about 3.2% next winter. Nothing to do with Andrew Bailey, Governor of the Bank of England, or Rishi Rich, or...
I have to say, I do think that this... this strange policy, and this is where you and I agree, this strange policy of pushing up interest rates to combat inflation, which is cost push, i.e. the price of a particular good goes up, that has to work its way through the system. It's nothing to do with money supply. And then the other thing, which we don't talk about so much, is the continual consequence of quantitative easing, i.e. the printing of money. That if, for example, one wants to have a look at the relationship between the pound and the dollar, it's actually because we've printed more money that has caused that deterioration in value, rather than necessarily interest rates. So I do concur, and I also think that not allowing and not encouraging financial institutions to create longer life mortgage products so that people could insulate themselves during a time of low interest rates against this kind of hiking. Again, that is a mistake made by our financial organisations, that they should have done what the US did, which is 20, 30-year mortgages that you can fix when the interest rates are low. You fix them, you pitch it there, and people are able to stay put. We didn't allow that to happen. We didn't encourage it to happen. And had we done so, a lot of people will be insulated against these interest rate rises.
And thank you for concurring. And also, it's a very good point, and they wouldn't be suffering. And of course, when people talk about this subject for some reason, we never mention in this country that in America, interest rates on mortgages are generally fixed. Every mortgage is a fixed rate for 30 years.
Exactly. So
people don't understand variable. And in fact, some of the mortgages very often go along with the property. So if you sell your house, you can sell your mortgage.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, which is, there we go. So...
so Britcoin.
Britcoin. So Britcoin, a quick word on Britcoin before we all fall off our perches.
Yeah, Britcoin is another disaster on the way. We have, just as we have Rishi Sunak smiling all over the place about how they're fighting inflation and winning and gaslighting us about how well it's all going, even though, according to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, we're now the last country in the world on the success list.
Yeah, I have to say though, I don't believe much of what the IMF said. I mean, they're
okay.
You know, if I had to bet the house on you know the success of their predictions, I wouldn't.
Okay.
Their predictions are terrible.
Okay, but he's standing there smiling about this huge victory when in fact nothing positive has come out of his actions. And now I see him standing next to the Bank of England smiling again about Britcoin. Now, Mervyn King, the former governor of the Bank of England, has called Britcoin, quote, a solution in search of a problem, unquote. And of course, central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs as they're known, have been tried in a number of other countries with spectacularly bad results.
Exactly, they have indeed. So we'll wait for that train wreck to land on our plates. Meanwhile, we must move on. Let's talk about Labour. They've got some big plans.
Oh my gosh, this is really exciting because, of course, Labour, and particularly as Boris calls him, the human bollard, Sir Keir Starmer, has been criticized over and over again for taking, well, basically taking cheap shots since the day Boris was elected without offering any viable alternatives. And now they've decided it's time to come up with some alternatives. And they have really big plans for councils and all the rest, and they have started to announce them. They have a network of a gaggle, I don't know what the collective noun is, James, of policy wonks, all working out their new policies. So
I know it's an idiot of policy wonks.
Perfect. Right. So, for example, the idiot is assembled in a room in the Labour Central Headquarters, and the first thing they've come up with, which is to help us, is that the chairman of the BBC will no longer be appointed; he'll be elected. This after the scandal involving Richard Sharp, who allegedly procured an £800,000 loan for Boris.
If they think that's the most important thing, I mean, really,
that's very important. That really goes to help us. The second thing they came up with is that the salaries of rail and energy company bosses and the returns to investors will be curtailed. Well, again, that certainly helps me. You know, hey, Mildred, the heating's back on. Thank you, Sir Keir. I mean, what in the world does that have to mean? But the one I like the best,
yes,
the one that helps me the most, is that they are coming up with a policy to institute whereby a certain period of time must elapse before somebody can receive a gong, a knighthood or an OBE or something for their service in office. Well, I mean, this just takes care of the increase in our food prices and our water bills.
I mean, this is the point, is that the policies that they're coming up with, that of course they're ahead in the polls because the Conservative Party have been such a mess. As soon as you start to actually look at what they want to do, which is to curtail people's freedom of choice, take more of your money, to attack any kind of wealth creation or indeed any kind of success in business, then you realise that we're between a rock and a hard place. Meanwhile, in a sentence, milk. In a sentence.
Milk is being reduced by Tesco from £1.65 to £1.55. Whilst they're also looking at reducing 1,000 other products. It is the first
and this is for their 4-pint bottle of milk. So could this be signs that the cost of living crisis is going to start to ease, Roger?
The cost of the weekly, I wouldn't go so far, as long as the government is still doing all the crazy things it's doing, which are the opposite of what it should be doing. But the cost of the weekly shop may well start to decline, James, because supermarkets are fiercely competitive as an industry. And if wholesale prices fall and you don't drop yours fast, your competitors are going to snatch market share from you. And the answer is yes.
Good. Let's hope that's the case. Dr. Roger Gewolb, CEO of Fair Money. Fantastic frothing this morning. There we go. We are going to be turning